Hi, I'm John McElroy, and this is Startups, Crowdfunding, and the Jobs Act. We're going to take a look at how the startup community is going to be impacted by the Jobs Act. What is crowdfunding? Well, it starts with a project or a venture. We might be creating a film, or writing a book, or creating music, staging a play, creating technology, developing a product. Pretty much the same need in all cases, and that is money to get the project funded. Where's it going to come from? Well, if we have a credit card, we might be able to get a little bit of money from there, but then what? Well, friends, family, will they donate? Maybe. But at some point, we're going to exhaust that money supply. Now we're a little bit stuck, but we get a brilliant idea. What if we got the money from strangers, people we didn't know? We wouldn't have to bug our friends and family anymore. Great idea, but where are we going to find these strangers? And then, of course, it hits us. We'll find them on the internet. And that's what crowdfunding is all about. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Lucky Ant, Rocket Hub, there's dozens of them. The premise is the same in all of them. Strangers are providing money to invest in our projects. Why? For rewards. Whether it's products, tickets, recognition, t-shirts, right? They get rewarded in dozens of different ways. This is a rewards-based system. Is it successful? Yes, it is. 300 million alone in 2012 just in rewards-based crowdfunding. There are other different kinds of crowdfunding. Donation-based, we're talking about donating for a good cause. Lending-based, we're talking about lending money to through microloans to companies in the developing world. For equity-based, we're talking about Circle Up. We're talking about actually taking an equity position in these companies. So rewards-based and equity-based, that's what we're going to focus on. Let's turn our attention to equity-based, because now investors are putting up money, but they're not getting back rewards. They're getting back equity or shares. They're taking an ownership position in the company. Now, selling shares of a startup to strangers on the internet, is that even possible? Lots of us know the general rule, which is to offer shares to the public, you either have to register those shares with the SEC or qualify for an exemption of some kind. Registering shares, that's a big deal. That's an IPO. That's expensive, time consuming. Let's face it, out of reach for lots of us. So, we use exemptions. There's plenty of them around. We're only going to look at one. That's Rule 506 of Regulation D. Why? It's the safe harbor provision for private offerings. How does it work? Safe harbor says if you follow the objective rules, you're assured of compliance. Really simple, cut and dried. Follow the rules, you've complied. What are the rules in the safe harbor, Rule 506? Well, it says that if you're going to offer securities and you don't want to have to register them, you have to make sure there's no soliciting or advertising. You can get as many accredited investors as you want. If they're not accredited, you're limited to 35 and they have to be sophisticated. If you bring in non-accredited people, you have to give them full disclosure and you have to make sure the shares are restricted. Accredited just means people with a $1 million net worth, not including the home, with a $200,000 income, $300,000 if a spouse is involved. Sophisticated just means they understand the nature of the risks associated with the investment or have somebody that can explain it to them. Now, can this all be done online? Is equity-based crowdfunding available? Can we do it? The answer is yes, if you're accredited. People have figured out Rule 506 in the safe harbor on the accredited side. In fact, Circle Up's doing it to this day. Go to Circle Up. If you're accredited, register. They'll show you investment opportunities. Now, can we do crowdfunding on an equity side on non-accredited investors? Is that available? And the answer there is not really. If you're not accredited, you're waiting. What are you waiting for? The Jobs Act. President Obama and Congress got together last year and passed Jumpstart Our Business Startup Act, your Jobs Act. April 5th, 2012 is when it passed. What does it do? Well, Title II involves accredited investors, the high net worth people. Title III, those are the non-accredited investors, the commercial or retail people, or consumer or retail, pardon me. It's known as the Crowdfund Act. That's where our interest lies in this movie. By the way, Title II has lots of good stuff in it. Stay tuned for the next movie to learn about that one. So what's the Crowdfund Act all about? Let's do a couple of Q&As really to kind of dig into it a little bit. First thing to ask is, are the new rules in effect yet? If the Jobs Act was passed last year, is it now active? And the answer is not yet. Even though the law passed, the enabling regulations still have to be written by the SEC. They were supposed to have done that job by December 31st. They're 10 weeks late. No one really knows when they're coming out, but best estimates are sometime in 2013. Hey, can your company directly raise money under these new rules? Hey, it'd be great if you could, but unfortunately you can't. You have to use either a registered broker or a registered funding portal. You can't do it yourself. It's not a DIY. How much money can be raised? Can you raise 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 25 million? No. It's a $1 million max in any 12-month period. Now, you can go again after 12 months, but you are maxed out 1 million for 12. So how much money can people put in? Is there a limit to that? Oh yeah. And it's income driven. Very tight if you make less than $100,000. In that case, they're capping it at $2 grand. And of course, if you make less than 40, it's even less because it's a 5% of net worth number or as well, the lesser of the two. If you make more than 100,000, it's a little more wide open. If you make $1 million, it's going to max out at 100,000. If you make less than 10% of your net worth, you're going to be able to invest somewhere between 2,000 and 100,000. If you're issuing, do you have to disclose financial information? Yeah. Financial statements are required for all companies. If you're looking for less than 100,000, if the principal officer certifies them, you're okay. If you're looking between 100 and 500, you need to get an outside accountant to review them. If you're looking for between 500 and $1 million, you're going to need an audit. $500,000 in fundraising, we're talking audited financial statements. So you've got a deal going. Can you post the terms of your fundraising offer on your website? No, you cannot. Very tight rules there. All you can do is say you've got a deal in the works and then point people to the registered broker or the funding portal for the terms and details. Can you bring in an unlimited number of these non-accredited investors now that the doors have been made wide open? The answer to that is no. You're maxed out at 2,000. And finally, can the funding portals buy and sell our shares in the secondary market as a market maker? That would be great if they could, but no. The answer is they can't. The legislation specifically prohibits it. So is this going to work? To me, there's 7 big issues. Let's look at them one by one. I'll do it quickly. The first one is the liquidity problem. Not only are the shares restricted once we acquire them, right? There's no secondary market. This is a big issue. Why? Because lots of small companies never have a liquidity event. If you think about this, you're going to be owning shares in a private corporation. Those shares are likely not to pay a dividend, and that company is never possibly going to have a liquidity event. There's not going to be an IPO or a sale. You're going to be stuck. There's a dilution issue. You're an early investor, a small amount. The people that come later are going to dilute you. How bad? We'll see. But it's an issue. Liability for sure, from certifying financial statements to disclosure litigation to compliance. Right? Early stage companies aren't typically used to this level of liability this early in the game. Confidentiality is an issue because you have to make sensitive competitive information available to the public if you do one of these offerings, including your financial statements. Too much info made public too early. Yeah, there's compliance issues, very burdensome from disclosure to governance to shareholder. Well, maybe that's not fair, very burdensome, but there's definitely burdens associated with it. It's costly, professional fees, portal fees. And here's the big one. You can pay the fees and get no benefit because these are all or nothing type fundings. If you're trying to raise $1 million and you hit your deadline and you're not at $1 million, you've only raised $900,000. All that $900,000 goes back to the investors. You don't get any of it, but you have incurred all those costs. All right, these are all or nothing funding models. It's going to be distracting from senior management to missing more attractive investors. You have to do this $1 million at a time. All right, it's going to keep you busy. What's the conclusion? My conclusion is equity-based crowdfunding, you know what? It's just not the same as rewards lending and donation-based crowdfunding. We're not talking the same animal. If you think about it a little bit, rewards-based crowdfunding, it makes a lot of sense. It's project-based. It's a one-time transaction. You put up your money to see the concert, right? You get rewarded with some ringside seats to that concert. You see it, you get your t-shirt, you walk away happy. All right? It's a transaction. It's a one-time event. There's no relationship. Equity-based, totally different. Now we're talking a relationship. Not as in a relationship we're talking every day. No, a relationship as in I'm investing today but maybe not seeing any benefit, right, for 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 years down the road. So I'm not sure that equity-based crowdfunding is really suitable the way the Jobs Act is currently constructed. I really have my doubts. There's no doubt the Jobs Act has created a lot of high expectations. Investors, yeah, they're pumped up. They're figuring, hey, now ground floor. We're getting in early on the next Facebook or Google. Startups, they're even more excited. They're thinking, finally, I'm going to get some access to growth capital. Realistically, have to ask, why has retail investment in startups always been discouraged? I don't think it's because of technical limitations that are magically solved with crowdsourcing platforms. Right? Crowdsourcing is really a technology. It's a communication technology. It doesn't solve the problems which discouraged retail investment in startups right from the very beginning. Now, crowdfunding delivers value, no doubt about it, if you're talking about rewards-based or donation-based or lending-based crowdfunding. In fact, I'm a big fan. I myself don't think it delivers the same value with respect to equity-based crowdfunding. It's just not there. My conclusion is, the SEC has not passed their implementation rules yet for the Jobs Act. I'm speculating, but I think it's because of the problems that are inherent in that model. And my own personal opinion is that after the initial excitement passes, there is a lot of pent-up demand on both the investor and the startup side of the equation here. My feeling is that this is not going to be disruptive to the current market operation when we're talking about funding, startup and early stage type companies, at least under the current rules of the Jobs Act. I think that once the initial excitement passes, a lot of people are going to be frustrated 2 and 3 and 4 years down the road with the securities that they're holding and their inability to actually see some kind of an exit. However, I could be totally wrong. The rules could be altered, right? The idea seems to have some merit, but not sold on the current implementation. However, love to see the SEC get those enabling regulations written. Would love to take a look at it, and hopefully I'm wrong. If you want to hear the presentation on Title 2, please subscribe to the channel below. If you have feedback or comments, I'd love to hear them. This is my own personal opinion. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.